What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Michael. In this latest big screen biopic, we follow into the early life of the famous musician Michael Jackson, also known as the King of Pop. Between the initial announcement of this biopic to the actual release of the film, conversations have sparked about what people wanted to see and what Hollywood was expected to water down. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the trailer, I was pretty excited. We got the producer of Bohemian Rhapsody, we got the writer of Gladiator and The Last Samurai, and we also have the director who has done Training Day and the Equalizer trilogy. A lot of competent talent behind the camera. But having said all that, with the Jackson estate having a producing hand in this dramatization, also came with its own baggage and challenges before we got the finished product. From life to script, from script to screen, there were 3 siblings in the Jackson family that decided to omit their likeness from the actual movie, including the youngest, Janet Jackson. And the original version was meant to have a much more drawn out and longer feature, including ending with the allegations. According to the lawyers of the Jackson estate, the accusers did not want to be named in the movie, and the family also did not want Michael to be portrayed in a negative light. Therefore, this led to further delays in production, as well as undergoing millions in rewrites, restructuring, and reshoots. Now, I think it's safe to say that I am a more casual fan of Michael Jackson. I only knew the basics about his life, especially him coming up with the Jackson 5 that included his brothers, as well as reports about his father being very abusive, and then him breaking out with a solo album, and eventually leading up to the allegations that tainted the brand. While certain details have definitely left a bad aftertaste, I love his music, and that is what fans, diehard or casual, will immortalize him for. I mean, I remember the first time I ever got exposed to Michael Jackson as an artist, and that was the Thriller music video that broadcasted over Disney Channel during Halloween. And as iconic as that song was up until this day, I mean, I remember that video itself giving me nightmares. Now, I have read and watched some very divisive reviews about this movie to a point where I didn't want to go out to the theater and see this at all. Luckily enough, my buddy and fellow critic Aaron Medeiros called me up, really wanted to watch this movie, so we did, and honestly, there was a part of me that didn't even want to acknowledge that I was going to be watching this movie because I didn't want to have the pressure to write it. And you know, I'll give my buddy Aaron credit for this, but he said something along the lines about how biopics like this are very difficult to review because they almost feel the same. And, you know, it really kind of comes down to how you feel about it, what you walk away with. After he finally got me to see this movie with him, I can honestly say that, guys, this was a damn entertaining movie from start to finish. And while I do understand and agree with many of the elements that critics have addressed, I cannot deny that I was genuinely surprised at how much this moved me, how much this floored me. Starting off with the positives, you're basically getting a 2-hour sizzle reel of Michael Jackson's greatest hits, where there were a lot of the iconic tracks that I knew of, but there were also a few, especially in the Jackson 5 era, which I wasn't familiar with, and they were all banger tracks. I mean, if you ever had the chance to grow up with a lot of his music videos, had the privilege to attend his concerts live, or have no clue or experience with Michael Jackson at all, the recreation of the choreography, the performances, and the music was just a phenomenal experience. The sound mixing, the lighting, the cinematography nailed all the fine details in the execution, and my jaw was just left on the floor. Even witnessing the onstage presence of his dramatization just made me want to get up out of my auditorium seat, grab my buckle, start swinging my hips, kick my legs up, and probably stand on my toes and go, "Woo!" Jermaine Jackson's son, Jafar Jackson, took on the responsibility, the pressure, and the mantle to portray the memory of his uncle. At first, I was blown away with the resemblance and the likeness of Jafar as Michael, but other than nailing the dance moves, it was the mannerisms, the flashy wardrobe, and the voice was just so spot on. The only concern that I had was his acting ability to channel the persona of his uncle, and damn, Somebody better call a priest because it's as if Michael was resurrected from the dead. Jafar didn't just work his ass off with the song and dance numbers, but there's this childlike vulnerability, wonder, and energy that his performance emulates. While there are multitudes of events and topics that could have been covered or focused on for a Michael Jackson biopic, this vision zeroes in on the abusive fatherhood of Joseph Jackson, played by none other than Coleman Domingo. Now, I know it's a little bit early to be talking about Oscar contenders for next year, but somebody please lock down Domingo for a Best Supporting Actor award because this man disappears behind the jerry curls and is a tour de force. The manipulation, the degrading, and the abuse was absurdly watered down, but unlike Denzel Washington in Fences, Domingo has a much more stern and calm approach when it comes to portraying Joseph, where he's pretty much intimidatingly scary. I mean, there are confrontations and needle drops between Joseph and Michael that feel like a boiling point is about to go off, and I caught myself holding my breath just a little bit too long. Getting into my mixed opinions. Now, when it comes to biopics, there are a lot of details and benchmarks in the life of a legend that would honestly take more than 2 hours to cover. Therefore, take this vision of Michael Jackson's life with a grain of salt. I mean, when it comes to the Jackson 5 era, that could have been a movie all in itself, but instead it is shortly lived within the first 25 minutes. And I gotta say, Giuliano Valdi, who plays young Michael, he was superb. I could have seen him lead a whole story. And it would have been interesting because Jackson 5 could have been Chapter 1 the movie. The story lightly addresses the vitiligo condition, but it does brush past a lot of the harsh symptoms and effects that it had on Michael in the long run. And when Michael decided to go solo, that was such a huge impact on the story that while we do get some of the reactions and opinions from Catherine and Joseph, I felt a little underwhelmed. Actually, no, very much underwhelmed that we don't ever flesh out any individual dynamics or, more dramatic moments between his 4 brothers that he performed with in the Jackson 5. Therefore, it summed them up to be more background extras. I'm so happy that we got to see him perform such classics like Thriller, Billie Jean, I'm Bad, and many more. But once we got a taste of how he had a lot of these ideas just flowing through him, whether it was writing lyrics or coming up with choreography on the spot, I wanted more of that. I wanted more context into his process and creative space. Other than the animals that he was bringing home, you could pretty much search a lot of this information about him online and, even do a little bit deep dives on some of the documentaries made about the Jacksons over the years. And so I was a little underwhelmed that I didn't get to learn anything new about him other than those teeny tiny minute details that went along with the bigger events. And I just felt like it played it safe. Originally I was upset that they refused to cover the allegations for the final cut, but if I'm gonna be honest, after watching this now, I'm glad that they didn't do that because it would have been such a drastic change in tone having to go from the rise of a pop star to the fall of a king in such a short span amount of time. And while it does stay consistent, I do think that this is a sugar-coated and incomplete representation of Michael's history. Overall, the scores from the critics were wrong about this one, so go check this one out for yourselves. I understand why people were upset, but I can't imagine walking out of the theater from this and still feeling that exact same way. And, from behind the camera to in front of the lens, I do think that this movie was made and crafted with care, dignity, and honor of Michael Jackson. Personally, I don't think you can spoil biopics, especially if you already know a lot about the legend of Michael Jackson. So I'm just going to say it. There is a title card at the end that does suggest that we are going to be getting another movie. There was a lot of songs that we didn't get to hear. There's obviously a lot of story that still needs to be told. So maybe this is just going to be as good and effective as this one. Michael is undeniably sensational, electrifying, and a powerhouse of inspiration and emotions. Well, alright guys, that's all I get to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out on the biggest screen possible with the loudest sound available. I want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of the day to hear me talk some movies. Look forward to more reviews. I am Jaren Ugbanawag, and I'll see you guys at the theater. Take care.